When you start any sort of study in science or survey or whatever have you, first thing you're going to do is collect a lot of data. And the difficulty with that is that, well, there's usually a lot of it. So you need to label it and organize it and such. There's two types of labels you can put on there. You can say a quantitative piece of information. So I give you a number that corresponds to that particular result, and the number describes the result. Or I can give you qualitative information. I can give you a word that describes that result, but that word doesn't have any numerical content to it whatsoever. So basically, if you have numerical content, then you're quantitative. And if you don't, you're qualitative. Alright, so simple example, let's say you take people at Clarendon College and you decide to label by a favorite football team. And Dr. Sane, it would be the Dallas Cowboys. So here you've given a piece of information that puts me in a group with some of the other people here in the school. But that piece of information doesn't tell you anything numerical about me. It just tells, oh, he likes the Dallas Cowboys. On the other hand, if you decide to go with height, well, I am 5'11". Here's another label you could give to me, which also describes something about me. But this label actually has some numerical content to it. It says if you start at my head and go down to my toes, they're 5 feet and 11 inches apart. So this is quantitative, whereas football team was qualitative. A good rule of thumb is if you have a number, there's a really good chance it's quantitative. If you don't have a number, it's definitely qualitative. A number doesn't always mean it's quantitative, but nearly always it's going to be quantitative. So let me give you a good example and a bad example where numbers do and do not represent quantitative data. Well, a good example would be, say, an address. My office is room 109. Well, first off, that is a number that describes my office. But not only is it a number labeling my office, that number tells you something about my office. It tells you, well, the 1 means it's on the first floor. The 09 tells you where on the first floor. Our numbers are, you start at the east end of the hallway, then the odd numbers are on the right, evens are on the left. So this tells you, oh, you go, it's the, well, 13579, so it'd be the 5th door on the right-hand side of the hall. So this is quantitative data because, well, first of all, I gave you a number describing my office, and the particular value of that number tells you something about my office. A bad example would be like a phone number. I mean, here you have a number that describes how to reach somebody, but the particular number doesn't actually give you any information. Like, for example, let's say you asked, what's the number of my favorite place to eat? And I say there's this greasy spoon. The number's real simple. It's guy can cook. Well, that should give you a hint that this is not actually quantitative information because I just told you the phone number without actually giving you the number itself. I mean, I could have just as well said what that is. I guess it's 489-226-2665. But I conveyed the same information without giving you any numbers whatsoever. And these specific digits, they're not counting anything. They're not telling you how big something is, how small it is. There's really nothing to these numbers. It just tells you where to hit on your phone. And we happen to label phone with numbers, but we could label them with letters, we could label them with anything, and you would still convey that same information. So even though we use numbers to denote phone numbers, the specific numbers involved really don't tell you anything about the place that you're dialing, so it's not really quantitative information. But again, usually when you have numbers, it is quantitative. So let's do just a few more good examples. Let's say, how much money do I have in my pocket? I tell you, oh, I've got 72 bucks. Okay, that is a label that describes me, and it actually does tell, oh, if you start pulling bills out of my wallet, how many will you find? Another good example, say, I don't know, what is the elevation? I mean, elevation means how far from sea level. So you're actually measuring something, so yeah, this is quantitative information. Or you could say, what year is it? Well, I mean, every calendar counts from somewhere. We happen to count from AD, but because it actually does count something, that number means something, and so it's quantitative. So anytime you don't have a number, it's qualitative. Anytime you do have a number, as long as that number is actually counting something or measuring something about the item you're trying to describe, then it's quantitative.